So you want to learn how to UV map. Welcome back everyone to the Modeling for Games series. Today we are going to be discussing what is UV mapping and how to UV map in Maya. But even if you're using Blender or some other software, all the same concepts are going to apply. I'm just going to be showing you in Maya, but it's all the same stuff. First things first, what is UV mapping? UV mapping is the process of taking our wonderful 3D models and turning them into essentially 2D models. If you guys have ever seen like papercraft before, it is very similar to that. With papercraft, you get this little sheet that you print out and then you fold everything together and now you have like some Minecraft characters or something. But what's the point of UV mapping? It's so that you can put all of these wonderful textures onto your models. For example, if we have a nice wood grain texture here and one of your polygons is right there on the texture, on the actual model itself, that portion of the texture is going to be on that polygon. How do we even go about this? Basically, what we have to do is, once again, referring back to papercraft, cut up our model and then unfold it so that everything can lay completely flat. For your guys' example, I'm going to be using this banana. So cut the cameras to the new angle. Okay, here we have our banana and our knife, and this is going to represent your 3D model, and then the knife is going to represent your cutting of the 3D model to turn it into a 2D map. So right here, the banana is the 3D model and the knife is your cut tool. And what we need to do is take the peel of this banana and lay it out completely flat on this cutting board. So first step whenever I UV model stuff is to try and find common, simple shapes that are really easy to UV. For example, cylinders. Cylinders are awesome because all you have to do is separate the top and the bottom, and then you just have to do one big cut down the middle, and then you can lay out a cylinder completely flat. In this case with the banana here, even though it's not an exact cylinder, we can see that the main body of the banana here is kind of like a cylinder, along with this stem up here. So step one that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a cut up here to separate the body from the stem. And then I'm going to take this little bottom bit here and I'm going to cut that off too. Just like that. And now this part is kind of like a plane, so we can just lay that down completely flat. And now we have two cylinders here. Cylinders are super easy. As I said, you just have to make one cut all the way through them. We'll do it on one of these corners here. Boom. I hope this knife is cutting. It is very dull. Boom. Now we can unwrap our model here. Okay, there we go. I have the peel off of the banana. Ignore the actual banana for now because now we have the outer shell of the banana. And we just need to make a couple more cuts. We can see it's mostly laying flat, but it's kind of wrinkled right here. So we can make a cut here. Help that lay out very flat. And then that's laying out pretty flat, but we could probably do cut right here. And it'll lay flatter. And for the most part, if we take this banana out of the way, this part is good. It is very flat. And lastly, we have one cylinder here. This was the stem. And all we're going to do is make, once again, one cut on it. And then we can lay it out completely flat. And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is a properly UV mapped banana. Now what we have to do in the modeling software is to cut up our model and then lay them out just like we did with this banana. So let's get into that now. Okay, so now that we're in Maya, I'm gonna teach you guys how to do it on actual models. So first things first, make sure that your mesh is separated into all of the individual pieces you built it with, because this is probably how you're going to separate your UV maps. So looking at this leg here, we can see that it is basically just a glorified cylinder because there's nothing on the top and nothing on the bottom. And that's why we deleted these faces, is because it makes UV mapping so much easier when you delete all of these hidden faces, because it turns all of your cubes into cylinders. So for example, on this leg, I always like to go into isolation mode when I'm UV mapping stuff, but then we can go into our UV menu up here at the top, click our UV editor, and it should pull up a tab that looks like this. this is going to be your actual UV set. Essentially, it is our cutting board that we had in the banana demonstration. So we have these different shells here, which you can see correspond to different parts of the model. The first step that we want to do when UV mapping something is to cast a projection, which is basically just a good way to get us started before we start cutting things up. So what you want to do is you want to go into object mode, click on your object, go into UV at the top, click planar projection, and figure out what axis here covers the most of my screen when I'm looking at it. Is it the x-axis, the y-axis, or the z-axis? In this case, it's either the x or z, and it doesn't really matter too much which one you choose, but I'll just go ahead and do the x-axis right here, and then click apply. And now, when we look at our UV editor, we can see that all of this is now one shell. If you want to go ahead and look at how a texture is going to kind of look on here, what you can do is up at the top right here, you can click on this checkerboard and it just kind of overlays a little checkerboard thing. And it's going to show us that that does not look very much like a checkerboard. In fact, this is completely straight lines. These are completely squashed. And the corners look okay. So now that we have the projection done, step 2 is going to be making our cut. A good rule of thumb is to try and hide your cuts because this is going to create seams, which is where the left side and right side of your texture don't perfectly meet. Once you start 3D modeling, you're going to start seeing seams everywhere in every video game you play, and it's going to bother you. A good rule of thumb is to make your seam on one of your beveled corners. Bevels are great for hiding seams because the polys get really condensed. So I'm just going to go ahead and go into edge mode and select on one of these corners, then go into my UV toolkit, go to the cut and sew menu. You have to click this little drop down for it, and then click cut. And that literally does the same thing that we were doing on the banana demonstration. We are literally cutting our model. Now, when we go back into our UV shell mode, you can see it's all still one shell here, but we can hit a fun button called unfold, which is basically just when I unfolded the banana in the banana demonstration, and watch what happens. Boop. It completely flattens this out, and now, whoa, look at that. Our checkerboard looks completely normal. Holy moly. Now the last step is to lay out your UVs properly. So you can go into UV shell mode by holding right click in your little port here, and then clicking UV shell. And you want to always think about what texture is being applied here. In our case, we want a wood texture to be applied. The wood grain, we want to run up and down on the model. So when we grab our UV shell, we want to orient it to where when we get an up and down texture, the wood grain will be running up and down. And then we can go ahead, you can hit Control L to help scale it up. And there we go, that is pretty much good. There's more you can do to it, but really this is all we need to do. And now this leg here is UV'd, and if we click on this one, we can see it's not. So hopefully you guys were able to follow along pretty well with that, but basically we just took this 3D model, which is a big sphere, and we flattened it out into a plane. Now we're gonna talk about transferring UVs. Obviously, we're going to be reusing a lot of parts. Do you really wanna go in and UV all of these individual little rivets that are the exact same model? No one's got time for that. So what you can do is you can click on a model that is UV'd, then hold shift and click on a model that is not UV'd, but is the exact same shape. Now you can go up to the mesh menu at the top of your screen, go down to transfer attributes, open up the little box, and now we have some settings. Go ahead and copy these exactly. Vertex position off, vertex normal off, UV sets all, color sets off, sample space component, mirroring off, flipped UVs off, search method closest to point. Go ahead, click apply. Look at that. Because this is the exact same model, we are able to transfer the UVs over to this one. And now, since we have these settings applied and saved, we can just click this one, shift click the next one, go to transfer attributes under mesh and click the button, and do that one more time with this last leg. Boom, we're ready to go. Now we can go ahead and UV this little piece down here, Same thing, we'll go into isolation mode. We can see it is a glorified cylinder. So what are we gonna do? We are going to figure out, okay, we're probably gonna do from the Z axis because that takes up the most of our screen from all of the angles we're looking at it, because X axis, we're just seeing straight through it. Y axis, we get a good bit, but not enough for us. Go to your UV menu, click the little box, click Z axis because it takes up the most of your screen, click apply, and once again, we get a decent looking UV thing. There's some distortion. It doesn't look awesome, but then now all we have to do is go into edge mode, select an edge on a bevel preferably, somewhere where we can hide the seam the best, click cut, hold right click, go to UV shell, click on your UV shell, and then unfold. And from there, we can go ahead and orient our UV in the direction that our wood grain is gonna be running, hit Control and L to lay that out, and now this little bottom piece is UV'd. So we can now click this one, click an identical one over here. Even though it's oriented different, it's still an identical model. Then go to Mesh, Transfer Attributes, done. Do the same on this leg here, Mesh, Transfer Attributes, Mesh, Transfer Attributes here. Boom. So now this whole little bottom segment is UV'd. Now we have some supports up top to fix. So we will go into isolation mode once again, and we did an oopsie and we did not delete the hidden faces here, which turn our glorified cylinder into a cube, and we don't want that. So delete the hidden faces because they're never going to be seen because they're butted against those other polygons. Now that we got our hidden faces gone, we can go ahead, cast a projection. That looks very bad. Now we're gonna go ahead and grab one of these edges, make a cut, grab our UV shell, unfold, rotate into position. If our wood grain is going up and down, we'd want it like that. And then hit Control L to layout. Boom, done. Now because we had to delete the faces on this one, we need to go in and delete the hidden faces on this one as well. And repeat that on all of these. That way we can transfer the attributes, because if they are different models in any way, shape, or form, the UVs will not transfer properly. So be sure that they are the exact same model. I'm gonna click this one, shift click, transfer attributes, click this one, shift click, transfer attributes, click this one, shift click, transfer attributes. Boom, we're flying through this. So I think you guys have cylinders down now, so now we're gonna get into some more complicated stuff. We're gonna go ahead and tackle a square here. I'm gonna go ahead and cast a projection from the Y axis. So we'll go planar projection, cast it from the Y, and once again, we have a subpar projection, but that's okay. Now, if we go ahead and pull up like a paper craft, we kind of want to mimic this sort of look we have right here, but obviously it's a rectangle. So we're gonna go in, we need to make a cut on the corners here in order to turn this into a more cubic shape. So I'm going to grab these edges along the corners and try and work my way on those bevels. So now I've made a cut here and down along this edge, and here and down along this edge, and now I'm gonna go to the other side and kind of finish it off. What we're trying to do is create this long piece right here that we have in the papercraft model. And I am just going to finish it off here, finish off this cut, click cut, and then click on, then grab my object and unfold it, and we can see it's pretty close. We have a couple issues on the corners back, let me see. Back on this side, you can see that gets kind of distorted, and that's because we need to make a cut right here on these corners so that it can lay flat and not distorted, just like it is in the papercraft models. So we'll go ahead and grab these corners and then cut them. That way they can be free and lay flat. Just like that, we are almost done. We will orient, Control L, and boom. Super quick, super easy. And like once again, if you look at it, it looks almost, it's so hard. Maya looks so awful sometimes. You can see it looks exactly like the papercraft model right here. So that's how you do anything cubic, is you have to cut the corners and you have to cut out a long side. Now, once again, we can go ahead and transfer these attributes over because we use the exact same model. Transfer attributes. Wait, let me get my little checkerboard back here. Transfer attributes. Done. Now we're going to do another set of cubes here. So we're going to go UV editor. We need to choose our long side. And we're going to go ahead and choose the back here because it's not so much of the focal point. And we're going to work along our bevels to help hide that seam best we can. And go ahead and make cut there, cut there. Wait, I almost didn't project. So we're gonna go ahead and cast a projection, and then we're going to make this back side the sort of separated side, I guess, because it's going to be seen less, so we can have a seam there and it won't be as noticeable. Boom, work along the back. We will make a cut. See how that looks, and once again, we need to cut the corners down here to make sure it can lay flat, just like the papercraft we looked at. We will orient as close as we can to vertical. Let's see, it's looking a little bit off here. Let me make a cut here and see if that fixes it. There we go. And now we have this bit UV mapped. Now we can do these little back pieces right here, and they are once again just glorified cylinders. Cast a projection, go ahead and we'll grab this bottom edge here on the back because it's going to be noticed the least. UV editor, just as we've been doing, and then we'll make a cut, and then grab that UV shell, unfold, lay it as flat as we can, Control L. We are done there, and then we can transfer those attributes down to this one here. Boom. Now lastly, we have these little rivet things, and these are going to be handled a little bit differently. They have no geometry on the bottom here because we deleted the hidden faces. So what we need to do is cast a planar projection from the y-axis top down, and right here, we can break it down as this top bit is very planar. It's very flat already. So I'm just going to go ahead and separate this top bit from this bit around here. And what is this bit around here? It is a cylinder. So we just have to make one cut. So I'm going to grab this whole edge loop, grab one of these edges here, go UV, cut, grab the shell, and unfold. And just like that, that is about ready for UV mapping. I'm just gonna take this long edge right here, and it doesn't really matter. This is gonna be metal. Metal isn't quite as much of a tattletale as wood grain when it comes to texturing. But there we go, we have that UV'd. So we can just go ahead and transfer all of these over to one another. Transfer attributes. And now I'm going to teach you guys a cool hotkey. If you guys press G, it does the last action you just did. So I can just go ahead and select these two and then hit G, and then it's going to transfer the attributes as long as I did the mesh transfer attributes and did nothing else in between. So I can just double click G, double click G, double click G, and that's a lot faster. Now look at that. The entire chair should be UV mapped. Last thing we're gonna do here to make it super easy to apply the texture is we are going to turn this all into one big UV map. I'm gonna go ahead and grab the entire object here, minus those rivets, because those are going to be a different texture. And deselect these. And I'm gonna turn this all into one big UV layout. So now that I have all of those pieces selected here in object mode, I'm gonna go into my UV editor, go to UV shell mode, select everything in here by clicking and dragging. Now that I have everything selected here, I will go ahead and click Control L, and it is going to lay all of these out for me nice and neatly so that the textile density is all the same, which essentially means the wood grain is going to be the same density throughout the entire model. Now the last step here is we are going to hold right click, go down to Assign New Material, click Lambert, and we are going to name this M_chair_wood. And now we can see that it is a different color. And now if we want to access the parameters of this material, you can just go ahead and click on any of the objects that have the material, hold right click, go to material attributes, and then we can change all sorts of stuff through here. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and make it yellow so we know it's been UV mapped. And now we need to go ahead and do the same sort of process on these rivets. The reason I didn't do the rivets with the wood is because the metal is going to be a different texture than the wood. So it just didn't make sense to pack them in the same little UV thing, unless if you're hand texturing it. But in this case, we're not. So I'm just gonna go ahead right here. Honestly, we can leave that as it is. Because if we hit Control L here, it's just going to spread all of this out and make it way less dense. But since it's all the same UVs anyways, it doesn't really matter. So last step is we can go ahead and assign a new material, Lambert, and we can just call this M_metal because we'll probably use the same metal for everything, and we'll be good to go. And that is this chair UV mapped. Now I want you guys to go out and try and UV map everything else all on your own. So far we've used a lot of cubes and cylinders for everything, so you guys should have the basics down. And if you don't, please let me know so I can make another video on this. I just didn't want this one to be like 2 hours long here. And I really feel like it's important for you guys to be able to go out and do it on your own. That way you really retain the information. If you guys want a specific video on any of the models, let me know in the comments and I'll try and get that done as soon as possible. Otherwise, go ahead, get all that stuff UV mapped to the best of your ability. But yeah, as always, I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.